For more than a decade, Ford's EcoBoost V6 engines have been the backbone of the F150 lineup. They promise the best of both worlds, V8-like power with better fuel efficiency, strong towing capability, and modern turbocharged performance. And for many owners, that promise held true at least early on. But as mileage accumulated and long-term ownership stories emerged, a different conversation began circulating among mechanics, fleet operators, and high-mileage truck owners. The question was never whether the EcoBoost was powerful. It was whether it was durable enough to reach 200,000 miles without costly surprises. Now, with the 2026 F150, Ford appears to be quietly acknowledging what many experts have been saying for years. The EcoBoost V6 formula wasn't fundamentally flawed, but it did have real weaknesses, and they needed to be addressed head-on. This isn't Ford abandoning the V6, it's Ford refining it electronically and philosophically to restore long-term trust. And the changes coming for 2026 may represent the most significant reliability reset the EcoBoost has ever seen. To understand why the 2026 F150 matters, you first have to understand where earlier EcoBoost V6 engines fell short. According to veteran Ford technicians, the core engine design was solid. The block, crankshaft, and rotating assembly were generally strong. The problems came from the systems layered on top of that, foundation systems that added complexity, heat, and long-term stress. Independent mechanics repeatedly point to the same issues: premature timing chain stretch, cam phaser failures that cause cold start rattles, carbon buildup from direct injection, turbocharger heat management challenges, oil contamination, and accelerated wear under heavy loads. None of these problems alone made the engine a failure, but together they formed a pattern one that became most visible between 80,000 and 120,000 miles, especially in trucks that towed frequently or were used for short trips. As one master technician with over 20 years of Ford dealership experience put it, EcoBoost engines don't usually die suddenly. They wear out expensively. That distinction matters, and it explains why Ford's 2026 changes focus far more on durability than on raw performance. Publicly, Ford defended the EcoBoost strategy for years, pointing to sales figures, awards, and impressive dyno numbers. But behind the scenes, warranty data told a different story. Industry insiders estimate that cam phaser warranty claims alone costs Ford hundreds of millions of dollars across multiple model years. Timing chain and turbo-related repairs only added to long-term ownership concerns. At the same time, Ford noticed a clear trend in customer behavior. Buyers who kept their trucks past 150,000 miles were far more likely to prefer naturally aspirated V8 South even, if that meant sacrificing fuel economy. A former Ford powertrain engineer summed it up simply: customers weren't rejecting turbocharging, they were rejecting uncertainty. The 2026 F150 appears to be Ford's answer to that uncertainty. Ford hasn't held a press conference admitting past mistakes. That's not how automakers operate. Instead, the acknowledgement comes through engineering decisions. For 2026, Ford reportedly focused on 3 key areas: reducing mechanical stress, improving oil and heat management, simplifying long-term service demands. Each target directly addresses a known EcoBoost pain point, and together they fundamentally change how the engine ages over time. If you followed EcoBoost reliability discussions, you already know the biggest villain. The infamous cold start rattle wasn't just annoying, it was a warning sign of oil pressure inconsistencies in component where that could escalate into major repairs. For 2026, Ford has reportedly introduced revised cam phaser locking mechanisms, improved oil flow routing to the valvetrain, and updated timing chain materials designed to better resist stretch under sustained load. Powertrain engineers acknowledged that earlier designs prioritized performance under ideal conditions but didn't fully account for high mileage wear patterns. The new approach sacrifices nothing in performance but prioritizes long-term stability. As one engine builder put it, you don't need a stronger engine, you need a calmer one. That philosophy defines the 2026 EcoBoost revisions. The turbos themselves were never fragile, but they were pushed hard. Earlier EcoBoost setups delivered aggressive torque early in the RPM range, which looked great on paper. The downside was increased heat and oil stress, especially during towing or stop-and-go driving. For 2026, Ford appears to have recalibrated turbo behavior with smoother boost ramp-up, lower peak stress during sustained loads, and improved cooling efficiency under heavy towing. Mechanics who've examined early components say Ford clearly prioritized thermal stability over headline torque. Numberza, subtle change, but a crucial one for long-term reliability. Ask any engine expert what kills modern turbo engines fastest, and the answer is almost always oil breakdown. Turbocharged V6 engines run hotter, circulate oil faster, and punish neglected maintenance far more than older designs. While Ford's earlier oil specifications technically met requirements, they left little margin for error. For 2026, Ford has reportedly improved oil passage design, refined oil cooling efficiency, and adjusted service interval logic within the engine management system. In simple terms, the engine now does a better job protecting itself even when owners aren't perfect. As one fleet maintenance manager put it, a reliable engine assumes people won't be. One of the biggest differences between early EcoBoost engines and the 2026 F150 isn't mechanical, it's digital. Modern engine control systems now monitor oil temperature trends, TURBO heat cycles, towing low duration, and repeated cold start behavior. Instead of reacting after damage begins, the system adjusts engine behavior proactively. That includes modifying boost levels, ignition timing, and cooling priorities in real time. This kind of predictive management simply didn't exist when EcoBoost first launched, and many experts believe it's the single most important reliability upgrade of all. Ford will never publicly say that EcoBoost V6 was flawed, but the scope of the 2026 updates tells its own story. Automakers don't redesign internal systems this deeply unless the data demands it. And in this case, Ford listened to mechanics, warranty data, and long-term owners. Instead of abandoning the V6 strategy, they doubled down on fixing it. For everyday drivers, the 2026 EcoBoost changes translate into fewer cold start noises, less timing system, anxiety, better towing confidence beyond 100,000 miles, and a lower risk of catastrophic repair bills. This doesn't make the engine immortal. Maintenance still matters. Oil changes still matter. Driving habits still matter, but the margin for error is wider end. That's what owners wanted all along. That's the big question. Naturally aspirated V8s still hold advantages in simplicity and thermal stability, but for the first time, many mechanics say the EcoBoost V6 is no longer the obvious gamble it once was. One veteran independent shop owner put it this way: I wouldn't hesitate to buy a 2026 I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago. That statement alone speaks volumes. So did Ford admit the EcoBoost had weaknesses. Not with words, but with engineering. The 2026 F150 represents a turning point where performance, efficiency, and durability finally align. For buyers who want turbocharged power without long-term anxiety, this may be the EcoBoost generation worth waiting for. And for Ford, it may be the moment they finally close a reliability gap that never should have existed in the first place.